Where do dreams go to die? They go right into your head. That's where they go. We all have dreams of like lives that we really, really want. And guess who kills them? We do, because we fall victim to what I call the 4 horsemen of dream destruction. And the first one's going to sound very familiar to you because you've been victim to it. It's expectations. The expectations that we think society puts upon us, that culture puts upon us, that our parents put upon us, that our friends put upon us. Expectations about who we are and who we should be and what kind of work we should be doing and how we should conduct our lives. You know, sometimes in class, I ask my students to close their eyes. I force them to close their eyes and actually imagine the life they wanted if they could just have everything that they ever wanted. And there are people who are literally twitching in their seats because this is so hard to do, because when we're very, very young, we start editing our dreams because we're thinking about who else will say no to them. But there's another person who puts expectations on us that kill our dreams, and that's us, ourselves. I had a student one time who went into banking, no interest in banking, from when he was a little child, drawing pictures of women in fashion. He wanted to be a fashion designer. His mother's Vogue would come, and he'd get to it before she did. And when she wasn't watching, he would just like burn through the pages, memorizing the fashion. Then he'd go draw the fashions. And he actually one time gave his notebook when he was a young kid, 7, 8, 9 years old. He used to draw the fashions. He gave it to his parents, and it disappeared, never to be seen again. And when he got older, he told himself exactly what his parents were telling him, was people like them became bankers. And he went on and he became a banker. It was only when he found himself in my class and I started talking about expectations that he started to come apart at the seams, and he did. He was actually a student who didn't speak the whole semester. I thought either that kid just really hates his class or he's in the back row having a nervous breakdown. Actually, he was having a nervous breakdown. That's the first destroyer of your dreams. The expectations that you feel are being put upon you are the ones you put upon yourself. Then the second E is expedience. It's just easier. We spend our whole lives in a noisy, difficult world. There's just, I don't know, maybe you're the one person who's got a really easy life where everything's just smooth and simple, but that's very rare. Work is hard, the economy's hard, our families are hard. We love all these things, but they're hard, okay? And so we oftentimes find ourselves taking the path of least resistance. We do something because we take a job because it's near in-laws, and the in-laws would be mad if we didn't live nearby, or we don't voice our opinion because somebody else would be mad, or we don't move someplace because it would be hard, and we don't change jobs because it would be hard. And we just end up living in a way that just minimizes friction. It's so normal, it's so understandable, but the problem is sometimes we have these dreams. I want to live in a big city, I want to have a big career. But it would require some blowing up of things. It would require some sacrifices that would affect other people. And we just tell ourselves, no, it's too hard. And we just do things. We make choices that are not in alignment with our wants and our desires and our dreams, our motivations, our everything, our yearning, because we go the path of least resistance. It's normal, it's human, but it's dangerous. The third E is events. And that is that something just happens, you get laid off, somebody gets sick, you get sick. We have been coming towards our dream or approaching our dream, and then it all gets blown up because of events. This happens to a lot of people who have careers that are growing and they're doing the things that they really like, and they think, ooh, my dream is within reach. And then another wonderful thing happens, but it's an event that can really change the course of your life, and that is that you have a child. And then you start to let go of some professional dreams that you have. And this is the battle that every working parent spends about 20 years having with themselves. So children are a big event. A spouse getting sick is a big event. And we drift away. We can drift away from the life we want because events got in the way. Again, very normal. And the final E is a biggie, and that's economic security. And that is that we make decisions based on what will get us the most money. Now, the interesting thing is that we do that even when money isn't a value to us. That's just, there's a million studies that prove that if there's a number and it's higher than the other, we will typically go towards the higher number. We'll take a job that we don't particularly like. We'll buy a house we don't particularly like, all based on financial data. But our brains are wired to make decisions based on hard data, and numbers are hard data. And so these 4 E's, expectations, expedience, events, and economic security, get in the way of us living our dreams all the time. And if you want to know, you may already know. Right now, you're sitting there and you're saying, yep, I'm events and economic security. You're maybe saying, like, I'm expectations all the way. Some people have all four. And in fact, one time I was teaching in class about the four horsemen, and there was a student in the third row center, and she had tears streaming down her face, and she looked at me like this, and she had the four fingers up, and she went like this to me. And so all four were stealing her dream of a life. All four: expectations, expedience, events, and economic security. I got to know her really well and came to understand that she was from a Southeast Asian family, and her parents felt very strongly that she was going to go into business, in a certain kind of business. She felt in terms of expedience, it was just too hard to do what she wanted to do, which was to work with small children in an orphanage in a different part of India that was not near her family. And I mean, then she'd even have to explain to her parents that she was going to have a life where there wasn't a lot of money. And that fight seemed too hard to have to her. Then events were that she got into business school, and she ended up going because everybody was like, yay, you got into business school, you've got to go. So she went, and it was putting her on a conveyor belt towards a type of job that she didn't really want, but she was on that conveyor belt. And then economic security, it was very hard to argue with herself over the fact that she was going to have a job, and if she went with her dream life, she was going to have a job that was not going to have a lot of economic security. She also kind of suspected that money didn't matter to her, but it was all tangled up in her head. But if you don't know which one of the horsemen is making you feel like you're in a suit that's the wrong size, I have an absolutely 100% free test you can take. It's on my website, and it says the 4 Horsemen quiz. I think it's like 8 questions. You can do it in a jiffy. Maybe it's a few more questions than that. And it will say, this is the horseman that's presenting the most in your life. You won't be surprised by the answer, I bet, when you see it. But then what? What do you do if you're sitting there right now or any point in your life and you say, okay, expectations are driving me towards a life I don't want? That was like that student I mentioned earlier who wanted to be in fashion design. And he had just followed the path of least resistance towards his culture and his family's expectations. And he had already worked in banking. But I think the real reason he was in business school was he was so sick of banking, he told his family that he wanted to switch types of banking just to stop doing banking for 2 years. And in the course of going through the Becoming You class, he realized that expectations were, the language he used, were killing him. And they were killing him emotionally, that's for sure. And he decided to blow it all up and to tell his family, and actually to leave business school and go back to school in fashion. He understood that there was going to be a gigantic reaction from his family and that he was going to have to do a lot of undoing because he'd already accepted a signing bonus at a banking company, that he was going to have to work there for a year to pay off the signing bonus, which he'd already paid, he'd already spent. People do find themselves in a position where they say, okay, I don't want to live that way. I want to live my dreams. I've got one wild and precious life. You know when this happens to us? Sometimes it happens when we have a health scare and we say, whoa, whoa, whoa. There's only one go round here, and I'm going to live it the way I want to live it. Or sometimes it happens after we get fired and we say, wait, I just wasted all my time doing something I didn't love anyway, and then they kicked me in the butt out the door. And so I'm not doing that again. So usually there's a defining moment that makes us face into one of the 4 horsemen, or all of them, or how many ever there are in our lives. And we say, I'm going to fight back. And so my advice to you is that oftentimes the reaction to you fighting back is so much less than you thought it was going to be. When I finally asked that student, okay, you're going to tell your parents you're going into fashion, what are your parents going to say? And at first he kind of looked like, oh man, this is going to be the worst thing in the whole wide world. And then he paused and he thought, you could have heard a pin drop in that classroom. And he said, I think they're going to say, at last. Even if it's really terrible at the beginning and people react, you can have the language to say, look, I've got one wild and precious life. I know what my values are. I know that my dream of my life, and I want to go for it. And I'm going to ask you not to impose your expectations on me. This may or may not work, but I'm going to try. If you're going to change your life because you've come to reckon with the horsemen that have been stealing it from you, the most important thing is that you communicate why, so that people understand it, so that you get through it with more clarity and with less pushback. This is why there's a language around the 4 horsemen, and that's why those 4 E's exist, so that you can talk with people about it reasonably. Most people, will not be surprised when you finally explain it to them because they pick up on it. And I'll tell you one final story about that student who left banking to go into fashion. He's now in fashion, actually apprenticing in London. His life did go on exactly as he had hoped. And he even said to me once, I don't even care if I become a fashion designer. All I care is that I went for it and I'm giving it my all. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But I didn't give up on my dream. The pursuit of achieving them, the chasing of the dreams is more fulfilling than working in a job you hate every single day. And at least you tried, and you'll probably get pretty close. And who knows, you may actually do it. But I'm not going to feed you a line that if you do this, you'll get your dreams. But you'll get to chase them. And so I say, push those 4 horsemen back. They are coming for you. But you have more power than they do. And you need to seize it and claim it and live the life you were meant to live.